Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 32 of Radio Europa. My name's Laura and I'm your guest host this evening. Tonight I am joined by William from England and Boris from Croatia. Hey, guys.
Hi there.
Cheerio.
Hello. So before we move on to the main stories, which are the Hope Not Hate State of Hate report and the Spain snap election, we're just going to go over a few key news stories from this week. So I've got two negative stories I'm going to start with, and then we're going to move on to the positive stories so that we can finish on a little bit of a high. So last week we reported that Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, was removing tax for women who had 4 or more children, or Hungarian women to be exact. But they say that a week is a long time in politics. And this morning he has spent the day in Israel with Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister, along with the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And he's just talking about strengthening his relationship with Israel. And Hungary are expected to announce the opening of a trade office over there. So that's just something to look out for. There's been a bit of gender or sex nonsense in Britain and France. So the UK government have now decided that the word mother is no longer a gender-specific term preserved only for women. And this has happened because a transgender man, hang on, let me make sure I get this right so that I don't commit a hate crime and misgender somebody. So somebody was born a woman and they're now a transgender man, and they gave birth to a child, and this person doesn't want to be a mother, they want to be a father. So now officially in UK law, mother isn't just about women. And also in France as well, the National Assembly has voted to replace the word mother and father on school paperwork. So it now says parent 1 and parent 2. But then we've just had a little bit of breaking positive news, and it's about Shamima Begum, who is a teenage girl who left Britain to join Islamic State in Syria. She wanted to return, quote unquote, home now that the terrorist faction is almost defeated over there. But we've just received news that the Home Office have denied her claim, and her citizenship will be revoked by the UK government. So Boris, William, do you have any thoughts on that? Because we were just kind of celebrating it, weren't we, before we went live? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple of things about this. Obviously, it's positive. It's good that her citizenship's been revoked because, well, we don't need another terrorist walking the streets of England. It'll be interesting to find out the technicalities of the case. I don't actually know this. Somebody might have this detail already, but there was a lot of discussion about the fact that we can't, under international law, we can't make somebody stateless. And the belief was that she only had British citizenship. It then came out that she was actually born in Bangladesh. So one presumes that she has Bangladeshi citizenship from birth, but I don't know the detail on that. It'll be interesting to find out.
Let me just say, it's so good to flex on the terrorists for a change. It's such a good bit of news. Take that, you criminal scum. I mean, there's been so much talk about this, and she did an interview with some British reporter in which she says that she saw the severed heads of prisoners of ISIS, and that it didn't. These are her words. It didn't faze me at all. So, is that someone we want around normal people? Fucking no. So, it's good. It's good that she's not coming back. It's fucking great.
I mean, we need to not get carried away, because this is just one girl and there's apparently 30,000 radical Islamists in Britain. But I love to just flex on her because she was so smug, and she was like, you lot should feel sorry for me. And I just thought, shut up. And now she's not being allowed entry to the UK, and she's having her citizenship revoked. That's brilliant. But yeah, let's not get carried away, because it's just one girl. And I think that story's taken so much focus as well this week. I think sometimes it distracts you from the bigger picture and the demographics and stuff. But as I say, it is nice to flex on her in this one situation. So
baby steps.
Well, yeah. And it's funny that it's a Pakistani Home Secretary as well, isn't it? That the only guy that actually had some balls to do something is not one of us.
I keep saying it's the best timeline.
Yeah. So there's two stories that we're going to cover today. The first is the Hope Not Hate State of Hate report for 2019, which came out yesterday, and yours truly, Defend Europa, are featured in it. So we're now officially big time far right neo-Nazi bigots, or whatever it was that they called us. And then the second story that we're going to cover is the Spanish snap election, because there's lots of news from Spain this week. So William, you're in Britain. I'll come to you if that's okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the Hope Not Hate State of Hate report?
Yeah, so at the beginning of every year, Hope Not Hate, and for the non-British listeners who don't know, they're a sort of charity, and they're the leading anti-racist charity, a bit like our equivalent of the Anti-Defamation League. They publish a report around this time every year, basically talking about, they highlight key figures and groups within the far-right movement, the wider far-right movement around Britain and Europe. And they basically say what they've done in 2018, they try and dab on them a little bit with, they ran out of money or whatever. And then they say what their prospects are for 2019 or the following year or whatever. We found out that we're listed on there as an alternative media site. And they don't really have any information about us because they clearly haven't looked too deeply. But they've listed us up there, and we are apparently destined to continue and grow in 2019. So thank you for that news. Hope Not Hate. I hope it's true.
Yeah, so they've listed us under alternative media, and they've called us alt-right, and they've said that Defend Europa is a small volunteer-run alt-right white nationalist news and opinion site, active since April 2007, and they've said that our talking points are migrants, Islam, and then they've said population replacement in speech marks, like it's not a real thing. And then they've kind of got a lot of their information wrong. I'm not sure where they've got it from. They mention me, they mention you, William, they mention Jason Bergkamp and Neil Turner, who were retweeted by Donald Trump during the 2016 election. But then they've spoke about our prospects for 2019, and they've said that we're likely to remain within the alternative media world, but we want to feature more interviews and possibly articles from more mainstream figures. I like how they've just made that up about us. Like we've never said that. We did a few interviews this year, but I don't really think that's going to be our focus. But to anyone who's in the audience that has read through the report, it's just crazy. I mean, they call people like Paul Joseph Watson and UKIP and Sargon of Akkad far right. There's no like differentiation between different levels of nationalism or whatever. Boris, I'll come to you if that's okay, because one thing that I find interesting about the Hope Not Hate report, and just them in general, to be honest, is that their view of the world is that there's no conflict between different groups. So they think that all the different races evolved at different rates and created their own cultures. But then when you put them together, it's just happy families, and we can all, sit around a campfire holding hands with each other. And I just think that it's a very naive, childlike way of looking at the world. What do you think about that? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because that is kind of a bit of a like left-wing sort of NPC view of the differences between the races and cultures, isn't it? Do you have anything to add on that?
Definitely. They start the report by talking about vague things like pejoratives, basically like prejudice and hate and bigotry and all these vague terms that they don't give proper context to. And they avoid historical realities. They avoid everything. They talk about population replacement as if it's some basically a conspiracy theory, even though all the trends are out there. I mean, even if you watch sort of normie sort of YouTube videos about sort of trends in the world, they have started talking about that the general trend in the world there's a trend of overpopulation globally, but the developed world is becoming underpopulated. And finally, they're acknowledging that and talking about how migrants are basically the only reason why the population in the developed world is growing. And Population replacement is something that is talked about on the UN's official website as well, easily found out. So they present a sort of black and white, easy to understand picture of the world, and it's just a Machiavellian tactic to use on the average voter, the average sort of normal person who hasn't dug too deeply into these topics and doesn't want to, frankly. They have a life, unlike the people who write these reports.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Hope Not Hate, someone's just asked in the chat who reads Hope Not Hate unironically, and their readership really is the far left, the media, and then us, and we read it to kind of take the mick out of it and say like, yeah, we're featured, but I don't think the general public do read them, and they have around 75,000 Twitter followers, but they definitely have fake followers, because I have 11,000 and I get a lot more engagement than they do. Like, they maybe get 10 likes on a tweet or something, so I think that they definitely have fake followers, but they're not really read by the mainstream public at all. Like, if I mentioned Hope Not Hate to anyone at work, nobody would know about them. But one interesting thing about them is that they are cited by academic people quite a lot. So if you ever go to like a journal and read academic articles about racism or terrorism or whatever, they do cite Hope Not Hate quite a lot, and they're a charity as well. Not sure how they're getting around that, but it is scary, the number of academic people that do reference them. And then, of course, the media reference them as well today. And I was having a look through the news articles about it today, and it's all like The Guardian and, The Independent and all those news vendors have mentioned this report, and they're trying to push the story again that, far-right terrorism is on the rise. One interesting thing that I saw on Twitter was that there are currently around 30,000 radical Islamists in Britain, and according to the Home Office, there are currently 60 extremist neo-Nazis in Britain. But despite that, this Hope Not Hate report has given, I think it's about 70 pages towards the far right and 6 pages towards radical Islam. William, do you have any thoughts on the media spin on trying to kind of push the story that we have a problem with right-wing terrorism?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear with Hope Not Hate that they mention the Mujahideen or whatever at the start, but it's clear that their raison d'etre is to bash whitey and bash nationalism. They might as well just call themselves, the anti-nationalist brigade. But what I do think is interesting, just going back to what you said about the fact that they're cited in academic papers and whatnot. There's a parallel here. It's like the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is always cited by the mainstream media as like this infallible source on events in Syria. And if you dig a little deeper, it's just one dude in his bedroom in Coventry. He's never been to Syria. And it's the same with Hope Not Hate. Like, they don't actually know anything. But the government, I don't know if this is true, but I think they get government funding, and the government uses them as a serious authority when they're looking at which extremist groups they should be concerned about. But there's some, like ancestral connection going on here, because they all cite each other and they all club together to make these rules and publish the articles in the media. So, it's par for the course in this game, isn't it? It's what we've come to expect. So it's just one of those things.
And if I can add to that, that's just that's an old tried and true tactic of manufacturing a problem and then creating a cure for it, which only gives them more power later. So they manufacture the problem of there being these quote unquote far right excuse me, extremists, and then they create the cure by, they have evidence, which is quote unquote evidence, which is this report, and then they create the cure by saying, oh, we need a new censorship law, or we need more police powers, or we need this and that, while completely trying to hide the fact that the real problem, which is multiculturalism and these tens of thousands of terrorist cells, basically fifth columns, they don't even talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. So they reference each other, but Hope Not Hate just make up whatever they want to make up about us, and they don't support anything that they're saying either. So I've got it up in front of me. And if anyone wants to have a look, if you go to page 68, there's my little picture on there next to Tara McCarthy and Mark Collette. But there's a big part about millennial woes. And it just says he's a racist YouTuber and he does this far-right stuff. But it never actually backs up what he's actually said that's racist. I mean, I'm not really defending him because I'm sure he has said racist stuff. But it's like they don't feel like they have to show support for anything that they've said. They can just say whatever they want, and then it's like, all right, yeah, he's racist, or he's far right, or he's a Nazi. And then for academic journals and the media to be referencing them and people using that as legitimate facts and information, I think it's quite scary. So I don't really think we have anything else to add about the Hope Not Hate report, other than next year we're going to try and get our own big spread, so our own like picture like Millennial Wars got this year. My picture's on the screen there. Hopefully we can be promoted next year.
If I can I just add one more thing about Hope Not Hate? So the impression I get is that they do these reports in an attempt to intimidate people like us. That it's like, we know who you are, sort of thing. And I think that they're put up to it by the government, who can't persecute us directly because we haven't committed a crime, but Hope Not Hate can intimidate us. And, you know, everybody's heart beats a little faster when they read their name in one of these, like, you know, hate crime or thought crime fucking manuals. So I think people should just be mindful that if you end up in Hope Not Hate on their shit list, don't worry about it. It's just, they're just trying to scare you. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Also, you don't have to be too worried because they got my name wrong. So so they don't even do their research properly.
Yeah, you were gutted, weren't you? It's like your claim to fame and they spelt your name wrong.
Proper insulting. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and actually Morgoth is in the chat now. I can see his name popped up, and he was obviously featured in the report as well. So I think they called him a racist Geordie blogger or something like that, which is kind of accurate, to be honest. So, okay, I think we're going to move on to the Spanish snap election, unless you guys want to add anything else about Hope Not Hate. No? Okay. So over in Spain, the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has called a snap election after the government lost a key budget vote. So the new elections will take place on the 28th of April. And the Prime Minister has said, between doing nothing and continuing without the budget and calling on Spaniards to have their say, I choose the second. Spain needs to keep advancing, progressing with tolerance, respect, moderation and common sense. So, Boris, I'll come to you if that's okay. What information do you have about the Spanish snap election?
Well, it seems to have been called because of a failure in an attempt of the ruling government, which has the Spanish Prime Minister, who is a socialist, and his PSOE party, to introduce new budgets for the next year. So they failed in that, and now they have to call a snap election to see what will happen. And the way it's shaping up is that three quote-unquote nationalist parties are on the sort of right wing, the most promising of which is Vox, but we do have to be careful with them because they do seem to be a bit on the civic nationalist side. But these three parties, they seem to be polling at around 30%, which is enough to form a government. But there's another possibility that the Socialist Party will form a government with another party which has about 15% of the electorate. So right now we're just looking how it's going to swing, and William's got more info on that.
Okay, and the interesting thing about Spain is that Pedro Sanchez and his Socialist Workers' Party only came to power last year in 2018. So they ousted former Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy in a no-confidence vote. So Pedro Sanchez rose to power with little influence in the Spanish Parliament. And he has just 84 lawmakers in a 350-strong house. So he's been struggling to get his laws through anyway, and has had to depend on smaller regional parties to be able to pass legislation. So that, I think that's kind of why this has all come about at this time. So this budget that he wanted to pass, his plan has failed. 191 votes against and 158 votes in favour. And it's been scuppered by opposition from Catalan nationalist parties. And I know last year we spoke a lot about the Catalan independence movement and the demonstrations that they were having over there. I don't know if either of you two guys have got any more information on what's going on there. Do you know? I mean, I haven't kept on top of this story for about 6 months. Have any of you two followed the Catalan independence stuff? Yeah,
so the schism between the Catalan independence parties and the socialist government occurred when some of the leaders of the Catalan separatist movement, their trials began. And I'm not sure exactly how true this is, but the impression I get is that the Catalan parties were relying on the socialist government to maybe exonerate the separatist leaders who are in prison. He didn't do that. I don't know if he ever promised to do that, but he certainly didn't do it. And I think that's why they've withdrawn their support for they had like a supply and confidence agreement. I think that's why they've withdrawn it, because the government didn't do anything to mitigate the damage to the Catalan independence movement.
Yeah, it's definitely the Catalan nationalist parties that have that are holding the current government up and saying you didn't do what we wanted to do, so it's gone to this new snap election. So the opinion polls in Spain show that no single party would win enough votes to govern on its own. So it's looking like there's going to be a possible coalition, pointing to lengthy negotiations between 3 or more parties. And the interesting thing is that it could potentially include, and I'm reading this from the mainstream media, they've called them the far-right Vox, but I'm pretty sure they're not far-right. Boris, do you have any information on Vox, what their chances are, and if you could perhaps give us a bit of an overview of what they stand for?
Well, nationwide, they're at about 11%, and they got to power and attracted voters mainly on their hardline stance on immigration. They're tough on immigration, and they say that they want to deport up to 52,000 illegal immigrants. And as well, they are opposed to Catalan independence, and they're calling for Gibraltar to be returned to Spain. So these are some sort of things that have been boiling up to the surface in the past few years in Spain, and Vox is tapping into these things.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's something that we'll definitely keep an eye on at Defend Europa. We've been following, we've been going for 2 years now, so any sort of nationalist or populist party that does seem to do well, we do keep an eye on them. So do give us...
Well, just to say, to give people an example of, to give them an analogy, the Vox currently is somewhat like the Sweden Democrats of Sweden. It's not quite a perfect comparison, but it's pretty close. So they're not as based as alternative for Sweden, but they are. They're something. They're better than what Spain has seen for a long time, but not quite there.
Sorry, I'm not quite there myself. So would you say they're quite similar to perhaps UKIP in Britain?
Yeah. I'd say actually they are very similar now that Jared Batten is there. They are very similar to UKIP, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm following the chat and people are saying that they're against illegal immigration, but that's kind of it.
That's kind of it, basically, yeah. They have some specific national stances which are toxic, so that's why I say we can't rely on them too much. But they are promising. They are a stepping stone.
Very good. Okay, well, I have a little bit of news, actually. I'm speaking to Morgoth on Skype, and he's going to make an appearance in the stream and come and tell us about his feature in the Hope Not Hate State of Hate report. So he's just plugging his mic in now and getting set up there. While we wait for Morgoth, if anybody in the chat has any questions that they would like us to answer, feel free to ask them. And if you tag DETV, then we'll make sure that the questions are read out as well.
We've just had an absolute cracker of a question.
Fire away.
Should I answer that?
Nervous laughter ensues.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just go through. Right,
the racist Geordie and the alt-right, racist, terrible far-right organization. Oh, this is exciting.
How does anybody know? This is so unprofessional. I'm sorry about this. Does anybody know how I can send the stream to Morgoth on Google Hangouts so that he can join us? Does anyone know?
I think if you're on mobile, there's an option to invite. If you go into the 3 dots, press on those, and then there's invite, and then I suppose you can type in his Google account.
Yeah, I'm not on my phone. I'm on my computer. So
try going into settings in the menu. That's
Laura, go into the chat. Go into the Telegram chat.
Okay. Sorry about this, everyone. Just bear with us, and we're gonna get Morgoth on the stream, so it will be worth it.
Boomer Tech, guys. Boomer Tech.
All right. Okay. So I've got the link now. Sending that to Morgoth. Right. While we wait, I'm gonna answer the question from Amor. What is your opinion on the JQ? Controversial. So without getting our YouTube channel shut down, we always said from the start at Defend Europa that we would report the truth. So we're not going to pretend that something isn't the way that it is just to try and be more popular or get more funding or anything like that. So we do report stories that involve Jewish people truthfully. And if there is an overrepresentation in a certain area, then we will mention that. You know, just like we'll mention there's an overrepresentation with Africans when it comes to acid attacks or Muslims when it comes to terror attacks. We do report honestly about Jewish people as well. But one thing that we don't want to do is be controversial just for the sake of being controversial. So we're not going to be putting loads of like Fasci 1488 stuff out all the time. But we do tell the truth at Defend Europa, and you'll see that in our articles as well.
And in the spirit of telling truth, I mean, there's a lot that Europe can learn from Israel. There's a lot we should emulate of what they're doing. Their wall, for example, is a very beautiful, big, sexy wall that we would do well to copy, you know. They do a lot of stuff well. We should copy a lot of what they're doing. We can learn a lot.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the Likud party in Israel, for instance, if you just copy and pasted that and replaced every mention of Israel and Jewish to like Europe and European, then actually you'd have a pretty good manifesto. But on a more broader point on the Jewish question, I think just to build on what Laura said, I think that's absolutely right, that we don't shy away from certain issues. We tell the truth when it's there to be told, but there's no point in being controversial for the sake of being controversial. And there's a way to say things or not say things where you can make the same point without being guilty of infringing anybody's rules or laws. So that's that.
Yeah, exactly. And just to remind people again, nothing is black and white. Everything is a shade of gray. So, you know, take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just still trying to get Morgoth in the chat. I think I need to send him the link on Twitter because.
Oh, I think I'm in. Hello.
Oh, hello there.
Hello. Welcome to the stream. Are you all set up with your microphone and ready to go, or do you need to sort anything out first?
I think I'm all right. Can you hear us all right?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
So yeah, the most famous Geordie racist blogger in the country.
Yeah. That was funny. So I think everybody in the chat will know who you are from your blog and your YouTube channel. But do you want to just introduce yourself, and if there's anybody who doesn't know who you are, tell them a little bit about yourself? Would that be all right?
I run the blog Morgoth Review and the YouTube channel Morgoth Review. And I also was featured on Hope Not Hate's Roll Call of Hate.
Yeah, so we've got, let's get your report up. So Morgoth's Review, ideology, you are an alt-right white nationalist. So summary of 2018, Morgoth's Review is a racist blog run by the pseudonymous Geordie blogger Morgoth, which since its founding in 2014 has become well read among the British alt-rights for its far-right commentary on cultural and political issues. How do you feel about the fact that they've been stalking your blog?
I'm surprised it's taken them that long, because I did an article back in 2016 or the beginning of 2017 actually called Hope Not Hate Deserve to Be Hated, and Nick Griffin put it on his Facebook page. So they've been aware of me for a long time, and they have mentioned, especially the comments section, they've mentioned before. But I don't know why. So yeah, I made an appearance this year. But I mean, the problem is what they're doing. It is easy to laugh, but then somebody pointed out to me that it's like setting off a flare, so that if they want to report your content, like if some lefty wants to report your content now, they'll take a screen cap and link the Hope Not Hate article, because you're now, like, Defend Europa in this case, or me, a verified hater. It's official, and here you are. So we could all get bumped off the internet because of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a valid point. And like I said, they are referencing them in the media and in academic journals, so people do take them seriously. I don't think the mainstream public read Hope Not Hate at all, so I don't think anyone's going to go into work, on Monday and people are like, oh my God, you were in that report. But people that want us to not have a platform do take it seriously. So what is it about the comment section that always gets this interest? Because they've mentioned it in this report as well, saying that they've said how many views you've got, and then they're saying that the comment section functions as a far-right discussion board, routinely receiving hundreds of comments on its blog. What is it about your comment section that they always seem to mention?
I don't know. It's just a bunch of pissed off white blokes. But there's not really, and they've got a lot to be pissed off about. But what they're doing is trying to put you into an ideological box, which they know everybody hates. In actual fact, all the people in my comment section are just regular blokes who moan about the world. And they can't really deal with that. It's the same with the main gist. This is what gets me. The main gist of the whole report is that they're saying there's like hundreds of thousands of people, and they've got this, it's like 63% of the British public don't trust the political class anymore. And Hope Not Hate are saying this is a crisis, this is a huge problem, and could lead to God knows where. We've got to get it sorted out. But I think, well, Hope Not Hate are themselves a government-funded organ who do nothing else except hound and persecute the British people. If Hope Not Hate want to actually do something about the country, if they want to mend these divisions, then they should start by abolishing themselves.
Yeah, and it's interesting how they never look towards the reason why somebody feels the way that they feel. It's just that this percent of people have got a problem with Muslims, or this percent of people have got a problem with the establishment. And then if you have that feeling, then you're the bad guy. So they never say, do you know what? Maybe people are a bit pissed off at Islam because they blew up 35 people last year. Or maybe people are annoyed at mass immigration because nobody speaks English where they live. They never consider our views to be reasonable. It's always like that person's a bigot or that person's a Nazi. And it goes all the way to like Turning Point. They were calling Turning Point far right, and Paul Joseph Watson and Sargon of Akkad and UKIP and Katie Hopkins far right. And it's just ridiculous, isn't it? The way they throw these labels about.
Yeah, I mean, they need to define what the center ground is. If everybody is a extreme relative to a center position which exists, then what is that position? Because I mean, yeah, Sargon have a cards on it. So he is then far right extremist according to Hope Not Hate. So if that's the case, then where is the center ground in British politics? Because he in sort of YouTube, he is kind of the center, which is why he gets shit from all sides. But I'm happy to have him as the center line in that way. But where then is the center for Hope Not Hate? It must be the Guardian. The Guardian is the standard position of the average British citizen. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And if you're to the right of the Guardian, then Hope Not Hate are going to come after you and try and destroy your life. It's totally wrong. And then they're going to complain that there's all these divisions in the country when they are actually the problem.
Yeah, and I mean, this is why thinking that they're going to get memed on all sides because they've labeled everyone to be far right. And the way to sort of delegitimize them is just to do exactly what you said and to point out these inconsistencies.
Yeah, I mean they have to make an argument at some point because they don't. What is the position that? What is their position on this? They don't have one. They're just there to shut down things. What the reactionaries call the cathedral. They're just there to shut people up, and then they're going to complain that people don't like being shut up. It's completely insane.
Yeah, they're just there. Well, like I said before, they're just there. They manufacture the problem, and then they are presented by the government as evidence for the problem, and then they manufacture the cure, which is a new law or a new way to give more power to the police or something else. Just a new way for government to exercise more control. And I think people should just be made aware of this. And if 63% of the British public already distrust the media, then they just need to be they just need to know about this, and they will stop trusting Hope Not Hate.
I mean, it's interesting to think where does Hope Not Hate actually get its power from? And it's primarily cultural power. It doesn't have very much political power, though it is backed by the political establishment and the media. But the problem is the alternative media, big YouTube channel. I mean, they really hate people like Paul Joseph Watson and Sargon because they do eat into that cultural power. They do sort of pull the rug from under them, and it's bad because if you go back about 10 years, then somebody like Hope Not Hate, these not Antifa though, they would at least, and have you noticed they've got a sort of soft, cuddly name as well? They would have had more perceived cultural power than what they've got now, and increasingly people recognize that actually they're just the attack dogs of the establishment. But if you go back some years, people were like, yeah, well, okay, we can't have Nazis wandering the streets and chanting racist slogans or whatever it is they do. They had that sort of cultural power behind them, and they have lost a lot of that because of the alternative media, because of YouTube, because of websites and Twitter and things like that.
Yeah, it's basically just when you talk to regular people, most people don't even know about them. So it is really just a way for the MSM and the organs of the government to legitimize itself. And as you say, the only reason that 10 years ago people take them seriously is because of sort of in Croatian, the term is strahovlada, which means fear of, well, it means ruling by fear. So because it's a sort of authoritative position, people would be afraid of it and like, all right, I mean, they've got authority, they're funded by the government, surely they must be right. But now that there are so many dissenting voices on the whole political spectrum, not just not just sort of our side of old media, but there's even on the left, there's a
Yeah,
quasi weird form of, old media of their own. And, we just need to add to that. And already alternative media, so PJW and, I don't know, Red Ice and people like that, they already get far more views than quote unquote legitimate and established media. So I think we just need to keep making jokes, memeing on this and pointing out, just showing that it's not true and that eventually that message will come across. It's just a question of when.
I mean, 5 years ago, if you went up on the Hope Not Hate main report, it was actually a big deal. And but now everybody just thinks it's a bit of a joke because they've lost so much of that cultural power. And of course, it's especially ridiculous to have like Gavin McInnes on the same page as Islamic terrorists. That Chowdhury fella was there down the bottom, and they sort of pay lip service to they did it on their website for a while, because I do follow the website now and then, and they'll have like, it's just page after page after page and blog after blog of like these far right extremists, and then now and then they'd have like a little story about a Muslim just to say like, just get off our backs, we've covered it, okay.
Well, these people are complete charlatans when they equate Chowdhury, who is a legitimate hate preacher and who did marches in Britain with flags that would say Islam will win and, Sharia will dominate Britain or whatever. And when they equate that to a guy making videos and the background is maps, I mean, a guy making jokes is the same as a guy who wants to violently take over a whole country in the name of a death cult. So, charlatans, memes, yeah.
Well, they also include the Tory party for being Islamophobic in there, and they also include just the most ridiculous things. I mean, I mentioned Turning Point, and Morgoth, you made a video about Turning Point, didn't you? I'd love to get your thoughts on those.
I haven't looked into them.
Turning Point, Yorkshire.
Sorry?
He's just been daft. What are your thoughts on Turning Point?
I said it in the video. I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want to, I don't want to get Defend Europa in trouble. But I think they are just controlled opposition. They're, I mean, they what we see going on with the Labour Party at the moment. The Labour Party is tearing itself apart over Corbyn and that momentum clique being, as George, I mean, I'm not really saying anything controversial. George Galloway came out and said it yesterday in a video, which was very interesting, actually, that they're anti-Zionist. And so now all of us, and I said it in the Turning Point video, that the seesaw is getting a little bit heavy on the left side. So all of a sudden, these kids, like, just sort of magic out of nowhere, they've been operating in America or something. Now there's a British ring, and they're like openly, proudly loving Israel. And so then now there's a brand new grassroots activist group, which has been sort of funded by the Trilateral Commission and the Goldberg Institute in Wall Street or whatever. And then they're going to like sort of reset the balance. They're going to be pro-Israel. But this has got absolutely nothing to do with the well-being of our people in our countries. It just needs to be laughed at, really. It's just bullshit.
And just to add to that, to the memeing on Turning Point, the other day they came out with this ridiculous take, which was, it was a meme, and it said, when the left finds out that conservatism is no longer pale, male, and stale. And they think that that's such a good joke, but it really shows that conservatism is, at least in their minds, what it is I mean, pale, that's a sort of bad thing in that view. And pale just means white people, white skin, right? Male is a jab at males who are people who actually bring about change. And stale is saying that these two things are boring, so it's against tradition. So it's just so funny to me how these Turning Point fellas, they are everything that they are fighting against. They just say they aren't.
Yeah, and they're sort of everything is just the opposite to what sort of Corbyn and the Momentum crowd. Like George Galloway said, Corbyn, one of the things that gets overlooked is when we talk about why they hate these sort of globalists, let's say, hate Corbyn. It's not just the Israel thing, it's that his socialist policies would really batter the rich. The super George Galloway said they're going to squeal like pigs if Corbyn gets in and starts. I mean, it's going to be like communism in Britain. He's really going to go to town on it. I mean, if Labour get in, I might just chuck the job in and live on the dole, because everybody's just going to sort of get bankers' money, and you know, I'm down with that. I'd prefer to have national in front of the socialist bit, though.
Yeah.
We don't get that. That's the downside to it. We get the goodies, but we're also going to get Diane Abbott and the endless Muslims coming in, which is like the shit bit.
Yeah, and talking of Diane Abbott, you actually is it your most successful YouTube video, or your second most successful YouTube video?
No, it's that was it was huge. It was 84,000 views. I've never had anything like that. I don't know why you got that much, but
check out Morgoth's video on his channel. It's called "The Tragedy of Diane Abbott." And it got a lot of negative attention, and people were sharing it on Twitter. Like, was it journalists and stuff were sharing it and saying, "This disgusting video"?
Novara Media, or something like that. The one that somebody Burani or something, and then that Ash Sakar worked for some organization called Novara Media. And one of the comments that I thought was great, they were really going berserk about it. And one of the comments said, he's so extremely racist, yet he just seems so calm and collected with it all. It's absolutely terrifying. And in actual fact, all I was really saying, and it did get reported, but YouTube have kept it up, because I was actually being sympathetic to Diane Abbott and saying the left made her a lol cow. This isn't far-right racist. You did this, which is true.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. I mean, they've put her up there, haven't they? And she is stupid. I know it's a meme and people joke about it and it gets repetitive, but she is incredibly stupid. But, you know, they want this sassy black African woman up there, and they've put her in a position where she's completely out of her league, and people are laughing at her, and then they expect people not to laugh at her, and it's just not going to happen. So I'm going to go through some questions, if that's all right, because we are coming up to the 1 hour mark. Morgoth, we've got a question for you. Can you mention your WikiLeaks retweet about Hope Not Hate chairwoman?
I don't know, because I'm not on my channel, and I don't want to. It's actually from 2016, and it's one of the big sort of the big hitters behind Hope Not Hate. Deputy chairwoman is a friend of Israel, let's say, called Ruth Smith, and she is listed as a person of, what was it, by the American State Department or something. Like she's actually, basically, she's an American agent in Hope Not Hate and in the Labour Party. So they had like they called her a high-profile operative or something, and WikiLeaks found that out years ago. What she's doing, and I don't know, but so we can see then that Hope Not Hate, it kind of circles nicely to get on the other discussion, because we can see where Hope Not Hate is coming down on this problem that's happening on the left, where the globalists. It's a globalist organ, really, and you'll see in their report yesterday they had quite a big section on anti-Semitism and Labour, which is really just anti-Zionism. But yeah, then they said there was something like 20,000 left-wing accounts, which were like Labour accounts or something, which were anti-Semitic. But yeah, the thing is, you got to be careful there, because if they complain about what's happening with Hamas or whatever it is on the West Bank, the sort of globalist faction will call that anti-Semitic. So it's a bit vague how you pin that down, and this is what's causing so much trouble, because for someone like Corbyn or George Galloway, they've basically, because the left will always side with the underdog, and in this case, it's the Palestinian people. Now, normally the left will have the establishment, the Western governments on their side when they side with the underdogs. They always get a pat on the back for that. If it's sort of black women or black men, anybody in relation to white people, the left always get a pat on the back from the establishment. But for some strange reason, when the logic of their ideology dictates that they also side with the Palestinians, and then all of a sudden they get the knuckle dragger in the mouth, the knuckle duster in the face of the establishment, and they're told to leave it alone and shut their mouths. You don't stick up for the Palestinians. And a lot of the left have recognized that, and it's leading to some funny conclusions about how the world works and who has the power. So this is really what's going on the left. It doesn't really have anything to do with us. And Ruth Smith is basically one of the big bosses at Hope Not Hate, and she's an American sort of CIA operative or intelligence operative at Hope Not Hate. And if somebody pointed out at my comment section of the blog, which is another reason why the Hope Not Hate doesn't like it, that at the bottom of the Hope Not Hate report, there's 2 postcodes, and it's like right in the centre of it's Chatham House or something in London. It's basically like right on the doorstep of MI5 and all of the intelligence agencies.
Right. Okay.
But you know.
Well, yeah, that's something. In fact, I'm going to go have a look at what you've retweeted and do a bit more reading on that myself. So we're going to move through the questions because we don't have very long left. William, I'll come to you if that's okay. There's a question from Sean Clark. Is it normal to allow an asylum seeker to run for government? It's the new diversity in Ireland. She also lied about how she got here and forgot to mention she spent 18 months in the UK too. I'm not 100% sure who that's about. Feel free to comment if you do. But William, what do you think about asylum seekers being able to run for government?
Well, I vaguely know about this case from a few Telegram things, but yeah, it's an odd one because she seems to have not followed the law properly as an asylum seeker. She hasn't gone through due process. She hasn't exactly been totally open and honest about her background. It seems kind of odd that this would be somebody put forward as a model immigrant to represent hardworking and law-abiding people. I think the problem is that we don't see immigration law in the same way that we see other laws. You wouldn't promote a murderer or a rapist to this level of publicity and high office. So it just seems like an epic case of virtue signaling gone too far.
Yeah, and somebody's just wrote in the chat, isn't there a South London mayor who is a refugee? And it's that Majid guy, isn't it? Do you know who that is?
It's South Yorkshire. He's that dude in
it's Sheffield, isn't it?
Sheffield, yeah. And he crouches on the table with his like gold thing in his hand, and he just looks like a total idiot. And I think most people in Sheffield, most white people in Sheffield, are fucking ashamed. But you know,
yeah. Morgoth, are you familiar with Majid from Sheffield?
I've heard of him. Is that the one with the stupid hat who slid down the banister or something like that?
Yeah, and he has like Doc Martens on all the time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't actually pay much attention to these idiots who are popping up. It's because it does just drag you down. But yeah, I know who he is, and it's like, yeah, we've got some clown as mayor of Sheffield. It's good for a day on Twitter, but yeah. What can you do? You've just got to keep ploughing on, really.
Yeah, he's awful. He just does stuff for attention. Like he tweets pictures of him sat on tables, saying like Brexit needs to go in the toilet, and then he'll be wearing a t-shirt saying like refugees are brilliant or something like that. He's awful. He's nearly David Lammy tier, but not quite that bad. Boris, I'll come to you with a question. Why doesn't Janice Atkinson or someone with a platform of similar size give a big speech on immigration like Enoch Powell did? He got a lot of heat, but no one dared to open immigration until Blair. Do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think it would be worth somebody giving a speech at this point, or do you think maybe we're not quite yet there yet?
Well, with Enoch Powell, we have to remember that this was a career move, which was career suicide at that point. But we remember him because it was the right thing to do, and it was a honorable and necessary thing to do. And we find now that he wasn't only right; he was he was actually underplaying it. At his time, in his time, what he was saying sounded terrible, but now that we're there, it's even worse. So, you know, if for example, Janice talked about it, it wouldn't be that controversial, really. And we already have had sort of big speeches like that. For example, a good recent example is the speech that Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux did at the EU Parliament, of all places, you know. And those Molyneux's speech was about tech censorship, but Lauren's was about immigration. So, to be honest, I don't think Janice would even be able to have so much influence, because that's one of her sort of talking points, and it's not really controversial for her to talk about something like that. I think a figure who would have more influence would be one of these sort of cultural figures coming out and just really hitting the nail on the head and talking about some of these sort of Overton pushing things. I think that would create change and have influence.
I think on that point, I would say the problem with people standing up and saying things like that is that there's a time and a place to move, to sort of shift the flag of public opinion slightly further away, and you do that in increments. And if you go too far, like Enoch Powell did, you end up ostracized and you don't have the desired effect. But I do think that at the moment, especially in Britain, the atmosphere is ripe for a vocal martyr. And what I mean by that is somebody without any baggage, so not Tommy Robinson, not Janice Atkinson, but somebody with no baggage, no dodgy past, no skeletons, to just find the biggest platform possible and say not outrageous things, but very cleverly thought out and well-articulated points about the incompatibility of racial mixing and so on and so forth. They would probably take a massive hit for it and be thrown in front of the court. But that, if the right person with the right mentality was able to harness that persecution and turn it into martyrdom, then I do think the atmosphere at the moment is ripe for that, and you would see untold numbers of people rise up and support it.
I agree. I completely agree. I'm just not quite sure who would be able to fill that position. I think Nigel would have Farage. I think he would have a big enough platform, but he does have lots of skeletons.
He has too much baggage. He's associated with so many things in the past that it needs. You know, we're crying out for an organic leader to emerge who has no baggage, no past, no connotations, but who can be followed. I think that's important.
Yeah, it's important to note that whoever does make that speech will be completely hounded by the government and the media, even if they do have the majority of public support. But I think it would be one of those things where people would look back in the future and say that person was right, just like we do with Enoch Powell. So I'm going to move on. Question for Morgoth. Is Newcastle still majority white? I want to move.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's falling by sort of 1% a decade. It is. It's still quite high relative to other cities. It's about 85% white. And when you go outside and into the suburbs, if you go along the River Tyne to either side, then it's less so. There's a lot of Muslims in the West End and stuff. We had the grooming scandal a year back. But then when you head out into sort of the suburbs to the north, not so much to the south, then yeah, it is still very white.
Very good. Yeah, and you do start to kind of see it creeping in, don't you? So first in the city centres, which have usually got quite a lot of students living in anyway, and there's lots of multiculturalism there. And then it does kind of creep, doesn't it, up to the towns and the villages. I'm from Leeds, and the city centre is very multicultural, but like the area in Leeds I'm in, it's still very white. But you can sort of see, you know, the odd percentage every year or so where it's getting more and more multicultural. But people are heading up from London up north, aren't they, with white flight, because London's getting so bad for people now.
Yeah, there's a lot of houses going up in the northeast, and the housing. It's funny because the houses are actually quite swanky. They're quite nice, and it's not actually for. And everybody, like a lot of the people, will say, "Well, oh no, look, it's for the immigrants." And I think they're not building them houses for immigrants; they're building them for white flighters coming mainly out of the sort of the area immediately around Newcastle. And so, I mean, it's interesting, really, because it means the land developers understand that there's a potential boom going on here, and they're looking to cash in on it. And so that they are, therefore, they're aware that white flight happens, because all these houses that are going up, the sort of standard immigrants will never be able to afford them. But what they will do is take over council estates in poor areas, and then whites who can afford it will get out and move into the new builds that's basically turning my countryside into one big wimpy estate.
Yeah, it's awful. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question to William, and then we're going to call it a day because we've gone over a little bit today. So, William, what do you make of the upcoming Channel 4 hit piece, Sleeping with the Far Right? And would you ever talk to the mainstream media?
Well, in anticipation of being asked the question, I've just quickly looked it up, and it appears that somebody's done like this weird life exchange and gone and lived with Jack Sen for a while and shadowed him and whatnot. And Jack Sen is somebody in the British nationalist scene I actually like very much. I think he's a good character, seems rather articulate and so on. I don't know much more about it, but in terms of speaking to the media, personally, no, I wouldn't. I'd never give any of them so much as the time of day, because, you know, they'll even twist. You just answer your name and they'll find some way to twist that. So I don't trust any of them. I think the best approach that any of us can have to the media is just, you know, hand up, no thanks, but no thanks. Go talk to somebody who wants to talk to you, because we don't.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I've been approached by the BBC and Vice in the past to do interviews, and both times I've just said no. I'm just not interested at all, because you know they're going to spin it in such a bad way. I
was approached by Vice when they were doing a report on eco-fascism, and I just told them to get fucked because I didn't want to go there.
How about you, Morgoth? Would you ever speak to the mainstream media?
No, I'd stay as far away from it as I possibly could. And I wouldn't, I mean, I don't want to sort of get you people in trouble, but I also know a little bit about Jack Sen, and I wouldn't hold out much hope for what's going to happen on this program. I don't get on with him at all. But you'll see. I think the far right will end up coming out of it as looking like a bunch of clowns. The nationalists will be made to look like morons, and I think Sen's going to play right into that. I think he's going to have a whale of a time making us look that way. So no, I wouldn't, and I don't really need to. At the end of the day, I'm just your man on the street, and I've got quite a big platform. I'm quite happy with. I've got like 5,000 subs on YouTube. I've got a blog. If I want to get something out there, I'll just use what I've built. I don't give a shit about the media at all, actually.
Yeah, well, you're an official far right bigot now. You're in Hope Not Hate's report, so you've made it. Okay, so I think we're going to wind down. I'm just posting your YouTube channel in the chat, so if anyone wants to sub to Morgoth who hasn't yet, it's well worth checking out his videos. So does anybody on the panel have any final words or anything that they want to add before we call it a night?
Just one thing. Trees before fake refugees.
What was that? Trees before?
Fake refugees.
Yeah, and actually that reminds me of Sussex Damsel, who made a tagline, was it stop aborting, start deporting?
Yeah.
Which made me laugh.
Very, very good slogan.
Stop aborting, start deporting. Okay, cool. Well, thank you to everybody in the audience who has listened, and I'm sorry that it went a little bit unprofessional in the middle there. We might cut that bit out and then re-upload it. But thank you, Morgoth, as well, for joining us on the stream. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
All right, see you later.
See you later. If anybody does want to support Defend Europa, we will put links below the description. And yeah, that's it. Give us a follow on Twitter as well if you haven't done already. But yeah, bye everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks then, bye.
Cheerio, bye-bye.